Hi, this is Kevin from BeeVanaHoneyCompany.com. Today I'm going to show you how to put a deep frame together from beginning to end, and we're going to look at how I do it. I'll give you some recommendations on how to do it, and then I'm going to show you how to load wax into that frame once we get that frame together. First of all, I don't use glue. Glue has formaldehyde in it. The formaldehyde gets inside the hive, not the best thing for the bees, so I don't use glue. I actually use 1/4 inch crown staples, 1 1/4 inches in length, and I'll show you that with an air nailer. These are great. They hold very well. The bars will not come apart in the frames. I've never had one fail in the frames. They do very good. Even heavily propellized frames inside the hives, I have never had a top bar pry off just using the crown staples. So here we have our frame. We have our two side bars. We have our bottom bar, which in this case is a grooved bottom bar. And then we have our wedged top bar. When you get your frames sent to you from wherever bee supply you order them from, you're going to notice that your cleat on your wedge is attached to the top frame. The first thing you need to do is break that off. So we break that off, and oftentimes what will happen is a little piece of the wood from that frame, from that wedge, will actually get stuck on this top bar. So I just take my hive tool, I just kind of run it down there just to make sure that all the pieces from that piece of wood are off. It's important because you want that frame, that foundation, when you put it inside this frame, to fit inside this groove. If you have an obstruction on here because you haven't taken the time to clean it off, you're going to end up wrinkling that wax, and the wax isn't going to sit in your frame straight, and that's going to be a problem, especially during the heat of summer when the wax tends to slough and fall off the frames when it gets real heavy. So make sure you take the time and you clean that up good when you're putting these frames together. I also like to take the excess wood that's left on these little wedges and clean those off with my hive tool as well, and it works pretty good. You can use a utility knife if you prefer, but that running them down pulls that off perfectly. They're perfectly clean, ready to go. We'll set that aside for later. Alright, I take my top bar, I lay it down, and then I put my side bars in, like so. And then I take the bottom bar and I attach it, and then I push my ends together. And I make sure that they're tight together down and sideways. And that'll stand there by itself. Then I take my staple gun, and we're using 1/4 inch, 1 1/4 inch in length crown staples, one on each bottom, one there, one there, flip it over, and then we put 2 on the top bars, 1, 2, and 2, and that's it. That is not going to come apart. You will not be able to pry the bottom bar and the top bar off this frame. That'll stay together. It's not going to come apart. You don't need to put nails up under the ears on the top bars, and you don't need to use glue. This is perfect for the application that you're going to use. And now we're going to load this with wax, and I'll show you the way I do it. I use monofilament fishing line. I use that instead of wire. 2 reasons. One, it's cheaper. You can buy, in this case, 700 yards for just $3 or $4 at any fishing supply or department store. The second reason I use it is because in the springtime, when those bees are starting to get full in the hive and they're thinking about swarming and they're making queen cells, you can cut those queen cells out. If you're using wire, you're not going to be able to cut those queen cells out because they're going to build the best queen cells right on top of the wire, and you're not going to be able to get them out of there. So I like to cut them out, and if you're over top a monofilament line, you'll be able to cut right through the monofilament line without any problem. So let's load this up. I use unwired foundation. Okay, this is for the deep frames. When you get your foundation, it's going to come separated with little sheets of paper to keep it from sticking together. And this is the kind of foundation that I use right here. There are no wires in it at all. Again, the purpose for this is so that I can cut queen cells out in the springtime if I need to do that. Okay, so that's the foundation I use. We'll set that down. You want to make sure that you take a nail, it doesn't really matter what size, the closer to the size of these holes the better, and clean these holes out. Take the time to do it. It makes your monofilament go through there so much easier if you take the time to clean these things out. If you don't, you'll be fighting it all the way, and you don't want to be doing that, especially if you need to get these frames put together and you don't want to spend all day doing it. Okay, so once we get that done, I set the frame down, top bar closest to me, and I put the area where the wedge goes face down. Okay, that makes it simple that way. And I take these small little 1/2-inch nails that I got at a Bee Supply place. You can get them at the hardware store or Bee Supply or wherever. They have a tiny little head on them. They're very sharp and they don't go all the way through the frame. And we nail one down here on the bottom, and then we nail down one on the top. Now you want to be careful when you're nailing these in, and you stop just shy of sinking them all the way into the frame. You don't want to nail them directly over that hole. If you nail them directly over the hole, there's a good chance that the point of that nail will go through into the monofilament line and break it. That's one thing you don't want to do. So once we have those nails in, one there, you can see one at the top, one at the bottom, we lay the frame down, and then we take our line and we just weave it through. Now I use all the holes. Why do I use all the holes? It takes a tiny little bit longer, I understand that, but I find that it holds the wax in place much better. I used to just do the X pattern, where you can just make an X pattern with your line, and that'll work, that's fine. But I found in the summertime, when it gets really hot and that wax starts to get heavy because the bees are loading that stuff up with nectar, it tends to slough or fall out from those X's. And there we have a little wasp that's coming to visit me here. It's a little bit of a dearth right now. There's not a lot of nectar out there. They smell some of the wax that's on this board, and it's kind of attracting them a little bit. So we get this all the way through. We wrap this around 3 or 4 times, whatever you like. You hold it and you nail it down. And then we take this side and we tighten it. We stretch it tight. We wrap it 2 or 3 times and we nail it down. And then we simply take our wire cutters and we cut the excess off, and you can see that's done. That's very tight, that's taut, that's going to hold, okay? That's not going to break. That's 12-pound test. You can use whatever poundage of test line you like. I like using 12 because it's a little bit lighter. You can use heavier. If you want to use lighter, that's fine, okay? So we have that in. The reason I load one side first is now I can load my foundation in there, and I don't have to worry about it falling through when I put it inside. So I take my foundation, and I put it in a groove. That little bugger is going to get me, isn't it? And I set it in there, just like so. And you make sure that it's in the groove, both top and bottom. And that's pretty much in there like that, okay? So you can see that wire's holding it. It's not letting it fall right through onto the surface of my workspace here. Then I want to take my wedge bar that I cleaned off, we cut off, and that we cleaned, and we want to put that in there. That sits right in there. You want to push it down in, and I nail these in with the same gun, but I use little 1/2-inch brads. The little 1/2-inch brads will secure that bar down perfectly, and the good thing about it is when I need to take these apart and clean the frames in the fall, or whenever I pull them, they'll come right out with a hive tool or a little pry bar. So I put 3 in, one on each end, one in the middle, and that's it. That'll hold that in there, okay? Now the next thing I want to do is I want to put nails on this side, one on the bottom, the same as we did on the other side. Just don't drive them all the way home. Leave the head standing out just about an 1/8 inch. And one on the top. And then we're going to wire this side. And we repeat the process. Basically, we start at the hole on your left with the top bar facing you. and we weave it right through these holes. Got bees all over the place today. So we pull that through. And then we get to the end and we wrap 3 times and we hold it, drive that down, we pull that tight, wrap 3 or 4 times, hammer that down, and we cut off our ends. And that's it. That frame is ready to go in the hive. And that wax foundation isn't going anywhere. That's in there. That's tight. The bees will be able to work on that. They'll be able to make it heavy. It's not going to slough. It's not going to fall out of the frame. The frame's tight and secure. That's the way to put those things together. If you have any other questions, you can email me or you can give me a call. Just visit BeeVanaHoney.com on the web and give us a try. Thanks for watching the video.